Thank you. Thank you. Dean Saloner, graduates, family, friends, faculty, Dean Joss, the Honorable Condoleezza Rice. I'm sorry that R.J. Miller could not be here today. He would be the one person in this gathering that would refer to me as that young man. I graduated from this school in 1962, more than half a century ago. It was a time when jet travel was just beginning with the introduction of the Boeing 707. There was no Silicon Valley per se. There were no fax machines. There was no internet. There were no cell phones, no iPads. The latest technological development was the color TV. There was no such thing as venture capital. The number one company in the world was General Motors. The biggest firm on Wall Street was Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Finner, and Smith. Commercial banks were not allowed to engage in investment banking activities, and there was no birth control pill. There is absolutely nothing in my journey that has any specific application for what awaits you. In so many ways, today's talk could be called Return of the Dinosaur. Why, therefore, before this, the greatest class ever to graduate from this best business school on the planet, why did the dean ask me to be here? And my answer is, I don't really know. But I suppose there may be some hope that parts of my journey might be relevant in attitude and philosophy. I hope so. But why I, a person who intensely dislikes public speaking, chose to accept is perfectly clear to me. The answer is, it is personal. For me, it is a rounding of the circle. There is a part of me that was born here. I had come here at age 22, a bit lost. For me, an extrovert was a person who stared at other people's shoes. Shy, insecure, unsure of what I wanted to do with my life. 2 years later, I left, much better educated. I was still shy and insecure, but I knew what I wanted to do if only I could pull it off. And that was to bring to life the business plan written in Frank Schallenberger's entrepreneurship class. So I returned, 52 years after my own graduation, to this place, this magical place which is an extended part of me. I returned to say thank you, here where all the aspiration began. In the summer between my first and second year, I'd had a long existential debate with myself, finally concluding that I would, before going to work for 40 years, take 1 year to go around the world, looking for education, for enlightenment, looking for myself. And in the winter term of my second year, I took that entrepreneurship class, whose road led to Japan. So after putting in my required 2 weeks of U.S. Army summer camp at Fort Ord, selling my car, saying bon voyage to parents and sisters, I set out with Gary Carter, who I met when we were both living in Carruthers Hall. In September, we were ready to go. We drove down El Camino to the liquor store that was the ticket agent for Standard Airways, a discount charter airline. For $80, we got on a Convair 880, a prop, of course, leaving from Moffett Field, 8 hours to Hawaii. We would surf in the mornings and sell encyclopedias door to door in the early evening. I am sure I am the only graduate in the history of this school whose first job after graduation was selling encyclopedias. After a month of this, I was ready to go on, but Gary had met a girl he liked a little too much to leave. So now I'm stuck with a decision: go home or not go at all. I loved Japan instantly. The people were friendly and many parts of the countryside scenic. And the yen was 360 to the dollar. So many things were affordable, like hotel rooms and meals and athletic shoes. After a week, I wound my way to Kobe, which was the headquarters of Onitsuka Company Limited, manufacturer of Tiger athletic shoes, which I had identified as the best quality, the ones with the best chance of getting a piece of the U.S. market. I called on the telephone and explained I was a U.S. businessman in town and I had an interest in distributing their shoes in the United States. I got an appointment. I donned my one business suit, Brooks Brothers, with a blue Oxford shirt, a black necktie, slipped on my black Bailey loafers, and took a taxi to the wrong location. I couldn't read the signs. I had gone to the showroom. They wanted me at the manufacturing facility completely on the other side of town. So I show up a half hour late. I am already nervous, and even though it was a cool day, I was sweating heavily. I'm met at the door by a 30-ish man, Ken Miyazaki, who greets me warmly and ushers me through to a conference room in the back of the building. On the way to the room, we pass through the accounting department, which has about 20 employees. They all stand up and bow. The big businessman from the US, don't you know? My entire assets are on my body. That business suit and my round-the-world airline ticket. It occurred to me that I might not get out of there alive. There are half a dozen Japanese businessmen waiting in the conference room. How does a shy, insecure person make a sales presentation? Sell as if your life depended on it, which it sort of did, didn't it? But I must confess, when I said I sold encyclopedias door-to-door in Honolulu, it was a little imprecise. I called on houses door-to-door, trying to sell encyclopedias. I never actually closed a sale. After a very awkward beginning, we got into the specifics about what was needed for the U.S. market. The talks warm up and eventually become enthusiastic. They have been thinking about getting into the U.S. market and have several track and field sample models built on patterns of the U.S. foot. They have an all-purpose model they call the limber up. They have a high jump model called the spring up, and a shot discus shoe they call the throw up. I might be able to help them. So we end with me placing an order of 15 pair of samples. And after I leave, I sit alone on a chair in the chaotic Osaka airport and ask myself again, where am I going? I'm very excited about the meeting with Onitsuka, and one part says, this is exactly what I want. I should race home and get this business going. The other said, if you don't go around the world now, you'll not go for 4 or 5 decades. I flew to Hong Kong, which is a good thing. The samples didn't arrive for 14 months. When the samples finally came in, I showed them to my old coach, Bill Bowerman, who was so impressed he asked to let him in on the deal. We shook hands on a 50-50 partnership, and each of us put up $500. We bought 300 pair of shoes. First year sales were $8,000. We made a $250 profit. In 1964, my life got busy. By day, I was a CPA for Price Waterhouse. My Army Reserve requirement takes up 2 days, 2 Tuesday nights a month, and 1 all-day Sunday, plus 2 weeks in the summer. Dating with mixed success, and all the while my real love is that little company that Bowerman and I have started. We get to $100,000 in sales. We get to $500,000, then $1 million. I multitask. I can drive a car, eating McDonald's filet of fish sticks, and reading the newspaper all at the same time. I was pretty efficient for a couple of years until I rear-ended the car in front of me. It took a lot of time to get insurance companies lined up, my own car repaired, and the cuts on my forehead fixed, so I don't do that anymore. By 1972, we got to $2 million in sales with a 3% net profit, but it hadn't been easy. After all, $500 apiece doesn't provide much equity, even for $2 million. I had tossed in most of my Price Waterhouse checks for 4 years, but I was spending 4 days a week at the bank trying to convince them to give us a little more credit. By now, I've quit Price Waterhouse and I'm going full-time. And somewhere in the process, my search for credit put me in touch with Nissho Iwai, the 6th largest Japanese trading company with annual sales of $100 billion. We began developing a positive relationship. Meanwhile, Onitsuka had brought a 32-year-old hotshot, Shoji Katami, with a charge to expand export sales. Export sales were primarily us. So young Mr. Katami brings me the following offer. Sell us 51% of your company at book value, or we'll set up other distributors. regardless of what that piece of paper that we signed says. With Katami's ultimatum, I did an instant cost-benefit analysis, which led me to this dilemma. How do you say go to hell in Japanese? So there I am, 34 years old, married, a 3-year-old son, 80% mortgage on my house, 45 employees, the personal guarantee of the $750,000 company loan, inventory going more obsolete by the day, and no new product to sell. We had a team that had been nothing 8 years before and built it up to become recognized in the sporting goods world. And that team had designed the 3 top-selling Tiger running shoes. We had a large pot of coffee and the support of the 6th largest Japanese trading company. And that trading company could and did introduce us to every shoe factory in Japan and provided the financing to import those products. But then there was the little matter of the lawsuits, plural, one in the US, one in Japan. I get my cousin, Doug Hauser, Stanford Law, 1960, to take our case on a contingent fee. It took 3 years. We won both suits. Meanwhile, we paid $35 to a graphic arts student at Portland State College to give a rendition of the side logo on the shoe, the logo now called the swoosh. Years later, she was interviewed by the Portland Oregonian and asked her what her second biggest project was. She answered, wallpaper for a Walla Walla motel. We had each of the 45 employees submit a suggestion for a brand name. Jeff Johnson, 1963 Stanford graduate, who I had met on a workout at Angel Field and who was our first employee, submitted the name Nike. Well, I said, I don't really like it that much, but it's better than any of the other 44, and hopefully it will grow on us.